Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Badminton Lights Out, a feature of the Badminton podcast. I'm Gronya.
And I'm Justine. Let's dive into it.
So on today's episode, we have an awesome interview lined up with both our national coaches. So the Australian national coach, Stuart Brehot, and the New Zealand national coach, Rebecca. So Stuart used to be a men's singles player. He got to around top 30 in the world. His last tournament was in the 2006 Commonwealth Games. And since then, he transitioned through to being a Australian junior coach and now Australian national coach.
Our national coach here in New Zealand was kind of a superstar during back in the days. Her professional career in badminton for Denmark, she had an outstanding record to her name. She was as high as world number 1 in mixed doubles and world number 2 for women's doubles. Her career highlights, listen to this. She got 7 times bronze at world championships. Wild. 4 times silver at All England and coming fourth at not 1, not 2, but 3 Olympics. And that's wild. 1996, 2000, and 2004. How crazy.
Crazy, but also heartbreaking. Fourth
is
just the worst. I'd rather just fail way earlier than come forth and just
We're so lucky to have her as a coach now. So yeah, let's go into it.
All right, let's go.
Now, just a quick word from our sponsors. As people who love badminton, we all know that it's not just about the sport itself. It's about the connections you make and the things that it teaches you as a person that you're able to bring to all of the other parts of your life. That's why we want to introduce you to the book Mirror of Magico, written by Al Liao, a former Taiwanese national badminton player who is as passionate about badminton as us. For those who love Harry Potter, you want to give this one a read, because Al has authored a fantasy story where 3 different characters with varying personalities go on a journey of adventure and learning. And they realize that things don't just happen to you, they happen because of you. And by being yourself and spending time in your dreams, you can conquer the evils and be the best version of yourself. So make sure you check it out. Mirror of Magico, written by Al Liao. You can find it in all leading bookstores, and we'll leave the link in the podcast description.
So welcome to the podcast, Stu and Rekha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gronya.
Today, our topic is how has badminton changed in the last 15 years, or the difference between when you were a player and now, right? So, but to warm up, here we have a warm-up question for you. What's the match that haunts you the most, that you still remember to the day, where you're like, oh.
Do you want to start, Stu, or should I?
You can start. You'll have a more memorable. You'll have a more memorable match than what I will. So you can start.
You can actually go back to your home country. I think Olympics 2000. We played semifinals in mixed, and we played St. Jun and Gaoling, and lost 17-16 in the semifinal. So missed the finals with 1 point. And the day after, we played for the 3rd place and lost, I think, 17-14. So no medal in that. At that Olympics, and I think that is probably the one that is haunting me most.
And at the time, it was a scoring of 15, right?
It was a scoring of 15, yes. Yeah, so settings in 30 in both matches. And we call it, when we look back and we review the matches and things like this, we actually played the rally, so it was not like mistakes or easy mistakes or things like this. So I probably think that's the one that haunting me the most. And if we would have won the semi, I would have played Trigus and Minardi from Indonesia, and I don't think we had lost to them the nine months before the Olympics, so that would have been quite a great final to play at that time.
And was year 2000?
2000 in Sydney, yeah.
That is haunting.
Yeah, so mine's probably not as memorable as that, or as important as that, maybe, should I say. But I think Gronya probably has already heard this story, but and I'm sure, Ricky, you'll remember, maybe you won't actually, because Denmark never probably had to do this, but in the old Thomas and Uber Cup format, we used to qualify to get into the next level, if that makes sense. So there would always be an Asian qualifier, which Australia always competed in. And the Australian men's team had never made it to the finals of the Asian qualifying. And we were playing a match in the Philippines, and I was really young, actually. I think I was only 18, 17, and I was playing the number 1 singles, and we thought we had a really good team and we were playing against Singapore. and we decided that in the team meeting, well, actually, the team decided that we couldn't win the first men's singles, which was me. So we needed to focus on winning the two doubles matches and the third singles. And the stadium in the Philippines was it was over 45 degrees in the stadium, and there was no air conditioning. And I had this idea, being a young badminton player, that I didn't like to drink when I was playing. So I went out and played the first set, and I actually won my first set 18-17. And I did not drink one drop of water or one drop of sports drink or anything for the entire first set. And I then I then changed ends in 45 degrees. I then changed ends, and I was freezing cold. I was sweating. I was dizzy. I lost 15-1, and I had no idea where I even was. And back then, that's when you also got the 5-minute break. If you remember, Ricky, we used to be able to go off the court, and I actually went and sat in this corner in the stadium, and the whole team were fanning me with their t-shirts, and I drank 4 liters of Gatorade, and I walked back on court, and I was losing 12-1. And I actually ended up winning that match, and I came back and I won. So I won the first singles for Australia. We were celebrating like we'd already got through to the next round, because we felt like our doubles was a lot stronger than Singapore. And the bit that haunts me the most is the fact that we then went out and lost 4-0 in the rest of the matches, and everything was for nothing. And we flew home the next day. So that to me is probably the biggest one that I think back on and think it was great to have a win, but from a team perspective, it was a huge disappointment, because we would have been the first time Australia qualified for the finals of the Thomas Cup in the old format. So
does this mean if we want to do an upset, we shouldn't drink water in our game?
No, definitely not. No. That was just another learning opportunity that you had to go through to change my mind about the right thing to do on court. So anyway, yeah.
That is crazy, but wow, very good stories. So our next question, another bit of a pop-up. Did you ever think that you were going to be a coach after your playing career?
No, I stopped in 5, and I don't think I watched a badminton match the first 3 years, and then I started watching a little, and I think in 2010 I got a phone call from the CEO in Badminton Denmark at that time, if I wanted to start coaching. I said, I haven't watched anything the last 5 years. Doesn't matter, he said, just come and have a chat and then we'll see. So no, I didn't have any clue that I wanted that. I think right after I stopped, I had, but then it just life went on.
What about you, Stu?
Yeah, I think I was probably the opposite. I coached even when I was playing, just because of circumstances. I coached all the way through. We had a national coach who was an Asian coach, and whenever we would travel to Asia, he would often we wouldn't see him for a few days. He would have other things to do, and so that meant that a lot of the time that we were traveling, I would be the Australian team coach, even though I was a player and an athlete, and I used to do all that. So I probably had that coaching experience, or I enjoyed the coaching part of it from early on. So I think I was always going to do some kind of coaching. It was
like a natural path for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I was probably a better coach than a player, even when I was actually playing. So anyway, that's probably not good, but that's the reality.
And I think both of you started as junior coaches. So Rekka, in Denmark, you were the junior coach, and Stuart in Australia. I guess, what has the process been from going from junior coach to national coach for you, Rekka?
I actually started as senior coach. So the first 3 years I had from 10 to 13 before I got Mikkel as my last kid. I was with the seniors, traveling with them, and because of the traveling days, they were quite significant. I think I had 110 days the last year I coached. I stopped after I got Mikkel, and then I asked, I assumed I didn't want to go back, and then I got a call if I wanted to have the under-19s. That was the new position they made in Denmark at that time, and then I went into juniors. So I actually had the opposite way around for that part. But I think the seniors from the beginning was a quite big step. I think that happened a lot since I stopped playing, and when I went on board on the coaching team in Denmark, a lot happened during the 5 years.
So do you notice much difference coaching from juniors to seniors in, your programming and management of athletes? What's a big difference for you, I guess?
I think the big difference for me back there were that the seniors was more about optimizing and finding the small things where we can change and develop them. Where for the juniors, it was about creating the whole pathway, making sure they balancing their sports, their studies, develop a lot of new skills. So that was more groundwork, I think, where with the seniors, it was more on the top of the pyramid, trying to find the small things where we could change and develop them.
Now we're going to go into the training side. All right. So, Raka, you were based in Denmark, right? Where did you train for a majority of the time? Because I know in New Zealand, it's very common to travel to Asia to do some training for a month or two during the summer. What about you? Did you just base yourself in Denmark, or did you travel to different countries for a certain period, or not at all?
Just base myself in Denmark. I think we have, at that time, definitely we had the best setup in Europe. I think there's more countries now that have a quite good setup as well, but I still think we are quite high on effort there. So I just trained there. Junior years, I had 3 different clubs where I progressed from my small hometown to a little bigger club that could offer a little more. And when I turned 16 in another club, and then I got to the national squad as I think I was 16 or 17 when I started there. So quite young. I was quite lucky. I had a sister that played at that time and was at the national squad. So it was quite easy for me on holidays, and whenever I had a chance that I could come along, because level-wise I could still challenge them. So I was allowed to come. So quite easy for me. Live 10 minutes by car from the national center, so quite convenient.
That's easy.
Yeah,
I actually did a quick Google of you, and the picture that shows up is your sister.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I can see her sister plays badminton. Then, what about you, Stu? Did you do a bit of traveling for your training as well, or was it mostly based in Australia?
No, a majority was actually in Australia. Again, I was lucky growing up that we had a national team that was all trained together. We tried to replicate something that happened in Europe or Asia in terms of that national team or national squad. So as a junior, or I guess an older junior, and then into seniors, I always had my training base back in Australia. I would often travel to Germany and spend a little bit of time in Germany, especially preparing for some tournaments in Europe. So I would do that most years. And then I would do the odd trip into Asia where it was just for, 2 or 3 weeks, again, to probably get ready for tournaments in Asia, because one of the big issues we always have in this part of the world is that the match practice or the speed of the training or the rallies or the competition is not at the same level as the true world class. So for me, I always enjoyed and lived in Australia and trained in Australia, but had the opportunity to I guess prepare for tournaments in Europe or Asia. But definitely my home was and home base was always in Australia. And I'm actually hoping, this is just I guess what we touched on a second ago. I'm hoping if you Google me, I'm hoping if you Google my brother who used to play, my photo comes up just to annoy him, but I'm not sure whether it does or not.
I can't believe with all of Reka's accolades, they can't get the right photo for Google. Okay, so I guess now that you guys are coaches and you help your athletes plan their tournament calendar, how do you think from when you guys played to now the tournament schedule has changed? I know, right, or outside of COVID times like 2019, our calendar year was very hectic with tournaments. How does that compare to when you guys played?
I think when we played, as I recall it, then it was more like that was 2 or 3 tournaments in a row, and then there was a break, and then you could go home and train, and then there was other tournaments again coming up, like in 3, sometimes 4 weeks periods. I think the tournament plan we have in the moment is really hectic and
crazy.
I think, crazy. And I think the big difference is at the old tournaments, you could actually go and play. There would be a qualification, and then you could go in that way. Now you actually have to get enough points to get into the qualification, and some tournaments don't even have qualification anymore. So I think it's a lot tougher to start and get through. Where if you would start it when I played and you had the level, then it would take you half a year, then you would have a ranking and be going. Now you can't be sure you get into tournaments and things like this. So I think it's quite tough on the market in the moment.
So I guess with that, the schedule, you would play a few weeks and then train a few weeks, whereas now it's kind of like a lot of back-to-back and having to, yeah.
With that, what was the average training week look like? You can start us off, Stu. How many on-court sessions and how many off-court, like gym and stuff, did you do in a normal week?
So I'll preface this by saying maybe I was a little crazy, and I was someone who always felt like they had to be on court and be hitting the shuttle. So we would train twice a day, every day on court, and I would often try and sneak an extra session in some of those days because I wanted to do extra than everyone else that I was training with.
Sorry, do you mean every day, Monday to Friday, or Monday to Sunday?
So Monday to Friday, and then we would also do a session which started at 7 a.m. and finish at 11:30 on Saturday mornings as well. So so I would do 2 on-court sessions every day, morning and afternoon, or morning and night, and then the big Saturday session. But in between that, I would always try and squeeze in a couple of secret training sessions, if that's what you want to call them, where you'd
pretend like you were going home, right?
Yeah, that's a bit of a story. So I used to, with national squad training, I would always, well, not always, but I would, to make myself feel good. And I think that's important. It wasn't anything else other than trying to get, help me from a mental perspective, get in the right frame of mind. So I would finish the normal training with everyone else. I would go and, take your shirt off and change socks and pretend that we're ready to go home, and I would just do my stretching. And then when everyone had left, I'd get out my new shirt and I'd get out my new pair of socks and I'd put them on again, and I'd go out and do, 45 minutes of footwork or something on those lines, just on my own, to make sure that I knew that I did more than everyone else that I was competing against, especially in Australia. So when I walked on court, I was very confident that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what happened. If I needed to, I could always revert back to making it a long match and hopefully coming out with a decent result. So, but yeah, for me, my normal week was that. And then I would also do, I probably was never the best at gym. So I would do 2 or 3 sessions. And then our coach in Melbourne used to always make us run every morning anyway. So I didn't have to do any extra running sessions. It was part of the on-court training. Again, he was a little crazy. So we used to have to do 45 minutes of running outside, and in Melbourne in the middle of winter, Gronya, it can be, 1 or 2 degrees. And so we're running for 45 minutes, and then I'd have to literally run into the stadium, change my badminton shoes, and then do 1,000 jump smashes. And I had to do that every morning. And so it was a little crazy, but that was my normal week. So that's probably why I'm always telling Gronya to do a little bit extra.
I think if Rijke was your coach now, I think she'd pull you aside and talk about managing load.
I'm sure she would.
Definitely.
I'm sure she would.
Definitely.
What about you, Rijke? What did your normal training week look like? Is it similar to Stu?
Probably not that many on courts like he had. I think we had 6 in the national squad, same like they have now. So each morning, 2 hours, and then Wednesday afternoon we normally had matches. Then I would be in a club, and clubs in Denmark are quite well developed, and a lot of the best players were in the same club. So we would normally be around 4 to 8 of the best players in the same clubs. So we would go there and play matches Tuesday and Thursday evening. I would normally have 3 gyms, but gym back in the old days were more like really basic gym, like machines or a squat and things like this, but not like today where there's a lot of agility in as well. And then I would have 2 running sessions, but they would be short and sharp at that time. So it would be something like 60, 30, 15 time, or 40, 20, 10 times break, 10 times again. So not long in duration, but really high intensity at that time. And that's it. Normally, I would say I would have a day off every week, or at least each second week from there. We wouldn't have any planned trainings on Saturdays, Sundays, only up for Olympics or Sudirman Thomas Super Cups, big events like this. Then we would use the Saturdays to have games again. But otherwise, normally we would of Saturday, Sunday.
Do you think you'd be able to survive Stu's schedule?
No, definitely not.
Stu couldn't survive his schedule.
And I would never get a jump smash in. You wouldn't even be able to put the paper under, so no.
Yeah, that's probably why I had so many injuries. Yeah.
Did you do training without water, Stu?
Sometimes. Yep, sometimes.
What's the worst injury you trained through, Stu, that you were dumb enough to train through or had to for, some bigger goal?
Well, when I say train through, of course you had pain management and you would have injections and you would have those kind of things to be able to keep playing. So there was a time where
they actually just changed the BWF rule or the WADA rule for that one on if you're allowed cortisone injections for tournaments. Sorry, continue.
Really?
And you're not allowed anymore?
Yeah, so you're not allowed to have like cortisone injections in your system without a therapeutic use exemption.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So no, I was actually, I haven't told this story to anyone really. I was in Europe and we were getting ready for one of the World Championships. I actually can't remember. We were in, I think it must have been the World Championships that were in Netherlands, and we were in France training with the French team. And one night the French team knocked on the door and said, "Would you like to come and play football or soccer?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Let's do that." It was one day before we had to go to the World Championships, and I tripped over and ripped every ligament off my ankle, and of course I then hobbled down the next day and took lots of anti-inflammatories and lots of drugs and still tried to play the World Championships because I was the only single player in the team. We had 5 boys and I was literally the only singles. We had four doubles players and 1 singles player, and I was it. So I tried. I played with that injury. It took a long time to get fixed, and it was an awful lot of injections when I got home to be able to keep training. But that's probably, it was, looking back, maybe not the smartest move. But anyway, sometimes you do those things. Yeah.
You managed to continue without having to do any proper rehab, I'm sure.
Of course, yeah. I thought the injections were the rehab, Gronya. So that's probably,
exactly.
Yeah.
Justine would be rolling in
like
her grave after her ACL rehab. Whenever we're on tour and I'm just bored or there's nothing happening, I'll just turn to Stu and be like, "Stu, can you tell me a story from when you played?" And he'll just come out with these stories. So he's always got something entertaining.
Now, just a quick word from our sponsors. The Badminton Podcast is brought to you by Volant. Volant was first born out of our frustration with the confusing, bright and unsightly clothes and equipment that we saw in the badminton world. But now it's so much more than that. Our mission is to accelerate the growth of badminton by providing players with products that enhance their love for the sport. All in all, it's high quality gear that makes you look and feel great on and off the court. So make sure you check us out at volantbadminton.com and follow us on our socials at volantbadminton.
I guess going back to when your guys' training schedules, I reckon Reka's sounds pretty kind of similar to our training schedules right now, but I guess what's the biggest difference? Let's just go with like the on-court training from when you guys played to now, I guess, in terms of duration, drills, focuses, I guess what comes to mind is the biggest difference.
Yes, I think duration, while it's probably a little shorter now than it was at that time, we still had quite short duration as up to probably the longest we had was 5 minutes at the time, but I think a lot of them was 2 minutes and 90 seconds like we do in the moment. I think the biggest difference were that from what I remember, that we had defense or we had attack exercises or we had doing first four or something like that, but we didn't have where we have a like troll today, that exercise, Gronya, but where it's turn around from defense to attack the whole time. We didn't really do that at that time. It was more like you're in defense and then you stay there, or you're in attack and stay there. So I think there's a lot more focus on the turnings now than there were at that time. I think what I remember, the drills were more simple, as I did a lot of push from net, standing, just defending and things like this. So really simple, and we could do it each day for 3 months, where now it's a lot more variation, a lot more different focus, I think, compared to that time.
Yeah. Stu, how about you?
I listen to this, and actually I'm quite envious of the Danish. Have a very I guess they have their own set way of training, and it probably hasn't varied lots and lots and lots. And when I'm saying that, I mean it's more there's a known system, it works, and of course they've changed it a little bit, but it's something that I guess they've developed the Danish way of playing a little bit, and we don't have that in Australia. We have influences from all over the world, and so you could be on court with a coach who says you should do an hour of footwork, and then you'll go to a pure Danish system who will say you should do this for 45 seconds. So I think the difference for me is, and especially coaching in Australia, is that we're trying to work really hard to create an Australian way of playing or an Australian system. And that's important because we can't just continue to copy others. And I always tell Gronya this, but the definition of copying someone is it's an inferior product to the real thing. And I think what I have found in the last few years is we're getting better at maybe combining the two, what I'll call the European style and the Asian training methods. I think we're getting better at combining those and finding the right middle ground with what that should look like. And again, if I go back to what I used to have to do when I was on court, we don't do 45 minutes attack and then 45 minutes of defense anymore. We try and reduce. Long. Yeah, Justine you should come over, Justine, and you can join some of my training sessions. You'll love them.
Okay.
But I think that's important for us, right? Is that there's definitely been a huge change from what I used to do compared to what I would ask any of our players to do now. But I do think Australia is still coming to grips with how should we coach and how should we play and what is our style. And that's why I said at the start, I'm quite envious of the way the Danish have that system already set up, that mindset already set up, and players and juniors just come through knowing that that's the right way for the way the Danish do it. So I think for us, we need to continue to develop that. But importantly, I think we are getting much better at merging the two systems together and creating something that will work for us.
Right. And I would say you both might face this issue with that. The majority of the club coaches, so where players kind of start out, they're usually mostly influenced from that Asian style where it's long, it's physical. How would you kind of combat that, when players come to you and they have no experience of this, 90-second drills or shorter or having the right intensity? Because within Australia, the majority of coaches, they have never seen that European style or understand it. And even the players don't understand it. So I know when I went to Denmark, my mind was blown when I trained there for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is like a totally different way to train. So I'll go to Rekha. Do you have any way to kind of combat this?
I don't know. I think most of the players, I think Justine will probably be better to answer that. But I think some of them got a little like, whoa, in the beginning when we started with the trainings. And I think the intensity were really low in the beginning because they didn't understand that the time is actually as short because we want the intensity up. But I think it's about trying to reinforce that it's about getting the game situation like same intensity, taking a good selection, get the pulse high like a rally, get a small break, and then go again. So you get more game mindset. I think it has improved a lot in New Zealand compared to when we started. I don't think you can, like Stuart said before, I can't copy everything I have back, the experience I have back from Denmark to here, but I have copied a lot. But I still try to make some different ways out and try to make it more like, okay, how can I target this specific thing we have? We have a lot of Asian players as well. And some of them is like, you have to be hard the whole time. But my training culture is it doesn't have to be hard. It has to be smart so we can manage the load in injuries and things like this. But it definitely have to be hard as well sometimes. So I would say the best thing is to try and reinforce and say that after the 90 seconds, you actually need to be tired. If you're not tired, one, it can be bad feeding, or two, you make too many mistakes. It's possible to get tired within the 90 seconds if the feeding is right and you do well in the exercise.
Yeah, I remember when we first trained the European way the first time, and we weren't used to the 90-second intensity, and you had to teach us how to feed. You're like, you don't have time to just walk to the shuttle and pick it up. You gotta like be quick. So it was good. It was a good change. So speaking of training, what was your favorite thing to do when you guys were training as a player? And the next one will be, what's your favorite exercise to give now as a coach to your players?
I probably enjoyed the defense part and the rotation part, both from defense and attacking.
Yes, let's go. Defense.
Yeah, I was definitely a defense player, so I enjoyed that part, and I enjoyed finding systems where we from the defense could make counterattacks, or from the attack could actually get in front of the long service line in the doubles and get it down from there, because we couldn't get it down from the rear court, full rear court. So we need to find our way and things like this. So I liked when we worked on these things and we got new things added to our game.
It was like more a tactical way, right, to do it. You had to be more creative.
Yeah. Find our way, know exactly what we covered after the shot, and when that shot came, what do I need to do and things like this.
And what do you like giving to us now? Like, do you enjoy watching a certain exercise where we like suffer, or
watching them suffer?
I always like multi. No,
multi is the worst.
No, kidding. I actually enjoy the Friday mornings, both for single and doubles, as where they are a little more open exercises like crawl or reverse crawl, or for the singles, the 1 minute where they with the big smash have to go forward, and I like exercise like this where it's not too locked. They have to find their way out of it from there.
What about you, Stu? What was your favorite? Was it footwork?
No.
Jump smash.
His secret trainings.
My favorite was always match practice. If Gronya will know that I'm a little competitive, but so I always really enjoyed, I guess, that requirement to win. So that for me was the match practice, was what, I felt like I did all the training through the week just so I could, so the match practice was it goes against all my philosophy, right? I just talked about the results not being an indication of whether you're on the right track. And yet when I was playing, in my mind, it was train super hard, beat everyone on Saturday morning match session, and I'd go away happy.
It's the Australian culture.
Yeah.
But again, you're a boy as well, a male character.
Yeah, a little bit.
Part.
Yeah. So super competitive. But in terms of, again, Gronya will probably know this, but I think she always has to, whenever she's training with me, she always has to do back court and rear court attacking. And she has to do it for way longer than she wants to. But I think it's just a requirement of women's doubles these days that if you don't have that game quality from the back of the court, and you don't have the variation, I don't think, women's doubles has changed an awful lot, and you can't sit there and just defend now for 2 hours and think you're going to win. That doesn't work. And we've worked a lot on trying to change the game style for Gronya and Setiana. So for me, and I think Gronya, you might, it's, we always do rear court, mid court attacking. And that's probably because it was an area we needed to get better in, but also importantly, again, I think Gronya and Setiana feel better walking on court knowing that part of their game is better than what it was, because they then don't have the same weakness, and it's not as easy to exploit that when they play against the world's best. They can be a little stronger in that area, and that gives them more confidence when they walk on court.
Speaking of change, you mentioned change a lot, right? So you guys have both gone through a lot of different scoring systems, right? So you guys played 15 and then 11 maybe, and then 15 again, and then maybe some 21
and 7.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster.
Yeah. Wow.
We're just one scoring system babies. We're just living the good life that you guys had to go through the roller coaster just for us to have smooth sailing.
But in terms of change, right? So let's say now they're thinking of changing the scoring system. What would you change first in terms of training now as a coach? Would it be time? Would it be exercise? Or
hard to say when you haven't seen it. My first thought were that because it's only to 11, then you will get longer breaks. So you need to be really concentrated when you're on court as a to 11, but you get a break already at 11, where now we actually only get a small break at that time. So I think it's about, creating that set up where you get challenged. So when you go on court, then you're on court. You can warm up till 7 and say, oh, now I feel well, because then the one set is nearly gone. So you really need to be ready at the start, right on. But how you would do it in training and things like this, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I think I would have to see the game a little bit first. I think it will remind a little bit of what we have now, because every serve is a point, no matter if you're serving or returning, and it would be the same with that point system. So I'm not too sure how it would change, actually, to be honest.
What about you, Stu? How would you approach it?
Yeah, I actually agree. I think sometimes when you change the scoring system, things happen that you don't think will happen. But I 100% agree that if it goes to 5 to 11, and I'm not sure how it can get any more intense or how it can get any more focused, but I actually think it will, and that will be a requirement to be able to change to that training that new system. So I do think that there would have to be some reasonably significant change in the way we train. And I know, again, I think it would probably, there's certain training styles that it would favor quicker than others, and others will have to take time to catch up. And I think, a 5 to 11 will definitely help that kind of European Danish system even a little bit more. And then the Asian system will have to play catch up, which I think it's done, which I think is exactly what's happened in the past few years as well. In terms of the way, back to fit when we used to play to 15 and you'd have to serve to win a point. And, that's why we used, that's probably why we used to do those intense training and the long
45-minute
training
rallies.
sessions of 45 minutes rallies, because that's what was needed. And you could play for 10 minutes and the score would be 1-2 because you've just swapped serve, 20 times and no one won a point. So the faster, the shorter the game points go, then the more intense it is, the more focused it is. And I feel like that would have to be, again, another significant change on top of, in Australia and possibly New Zealand. We're already trying to play catch up in that space. So we have to then catch up even more. And that would be difficult, but that's something we'd have to work through and try and overcome. But I definitely feel like that's, and having been to Tokyo and watching Victor and those guys, and, every point is almost perfect. And that's what it has to be. And I can't visualize how that would look if it goes
More
to
perfect.
5 to 11, but it's got to be more perfect. And that's the reality. Yeah.
I do think you would see in the beginning that, like, every time the scoring system would be changed, that the matches in the beginning would be crap. That would be a big win to one of the sides. And after half a year, 9 months, then it will start to be equal and be really long. Like now we are going really long as well with 21 in the beginning. We didn't see matches over 30 minutes. And suddenly we see 90 minutes matches again, because people adapt and get used to the pace and mentality, challenges and things like this. So I do think that it would drop in quality in the beginning, and then it would find its way again.
Yeah,
Agree. Totally agree.
This is a question that's kind of I've had on the top of my mind for a long time, but being that you were kind of at the world number 1 spot for a while, Rekka, how do you think back then that compares to the world number 1 position now? Like, how do you think you would compare if that the timelines went next to each other? Do you think you would be top 20, or you would be still like number 1? Or
so you ask for me myself, or do you ask for the players at that time compared to the players there is now?
Yeah, overall, I guess the players at that time.
Yeah, I think there would be players that would have a really good shot in being at the same level like there is today. Yeah. If you see like Lin Dan, you see Lee Chong Wai, you see so they stopped recently. Bo Nuller, the Danish men's double, stopped recently. They were top players when I played, and they were still top players 10 years after. I think where they failed, but they didn't fail, but where they started going down was because of the age, not because they couldn't. So when they were at the highest, if they would have competed today, I think they would have a good chance to be at that level. I think if I look back, I think there were more players that had a style, as there were more like a unique style of playing. Even the Chinese, they had small Gong Shikao, they had tall Sang Ning, as they could play different styles in the games. Where today, if you watch a lot of them, it's a little similar in playing styles, not the same, but more similar. Where I think back in the old days, there were more players that had I say unique, but a different playing style. So I think they would come along quite well, but I do think the speed and pace is higher now. But sometimes I don't think it's the right choice to put pace into all rallies. Sometimes it would be good to take a little pace out and then come in again. So I think
pretty comparable, you think?
In some ways, yeah. But there have been a big improvement or a change in pace in the games.
Anything to add, Stu?
I don't think I can argue with. I can't talk about being world number one. That's not possible,
From
right?
What you've seen.
From what I've seen, I feel like we're probably going to go into a much different topic. So I'll keep it short because I could talk for hours about this. But I actually feel like maybe not talking about what I've seen from the past to now, but what I see from now into the future. And I see. So I think it's related in terms of. I see probably there being even a bigger gap opening up between the very best players in the world and then the players that are below that. And I know, back in the old days, if that's what we want to call it, you could go to a tournament and you would go through, as Rekha said, you could go through qualifying, and some of those players would still do quite well in the main draw. Whereas now I think there's this almost first group of athletes that are really ahead of everyone else, and I actually feel like that group of athletes could get smaller in the next few years as people like Victor become even more professional than what others are. They develop their own support teams, they develop their own coaching teams, and the sport becomes a little bit more individualized in terms of athletes having the resources and the money and everything to pull together to make them a better player. And I think that's the change that we're probably starting to witness now with people like with Victor and others that are, Carolina and those ones that are doing something just a little bit different, and the whole focus is on them, and they're wrapping a whole team around them rather than being part of a much larger national squad and I feel like that's something we're going to see in the near future, a little bit like what happened in tennis, I think, where you get the people who earn the most money, they can spend more money on themselves, they can spend more money on their team, and they can create opportunities to get better and better. And then you'll have another group which are, sticking to the older system where it's, the national federation is supporting them and they're just doing whatever the coach says to do. And I feel like that's what we might see transition into the near future. And I think that for me is probably the biggest difference between when I used to play and what's there now. If I think about the best men's singles players, if I think about the way someone like Paul-Eric played back in 2000 compared to the way Victor played in 2020, if you just simply put those two players on the court together, then a Paul-Eric when he used to play at his best and a Victor when he used to play at his best, I feel like Victor will win really comfortably. But but Paul-Eric would have already, if he was still playing, he would have changed his training program to be able to compete at that highest level. So I think if the question is, could the world champion in 2000 play against the world champion in 2020? If they did everything the same, then the 2020 is definitely going to win comfortably because of the resources and the science and the training and everything else that's changed. But the personality type that gets you to that level means that they will have adapted. And if they were in the same position, they still would have been world number one, probably. They would have just found a different way of doing it with the extra resources available. But I feel like that's a long answer, sorry, but I feel like, the future's going to be really interesting because I do see that the best will get better and the middle rung might struggle to keep up with that best because of the resources and the money that's going to be available for them.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So we can talk about this for hours, right? So we better wrap things up. So I have one last question for you guys. If you could relive one of your favorite matches, which one would it be? Just one.
Stu's best win was probably beating me one time ever in box.
Oh, I can seriously
career.
I can relive that almost at every training session, Gronya.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure I have one match, but I think
about one person you just love to beat alternatively.
You.
No. It was for Reka.
I still really enjoy beating you. What I was going to say is I think we would all love to go back and relive what we did. And for me, of course, I would like to do it better. And maybe that's not the same for Reka because she was world number one, right? But I think for me, I miss the competitiveness. I miss the adrenaline that you get when you go on court. You miss the friendship that the people you travel with, and the friends that you have, and it's almost like this lifestyle that you have when you're on tour. And for me, that's probably the bit that you'd love to relive, and maybe that's why we got into coaching, because you sort of get some of that from a coaching perspective, but it's totally different. It's a totally different perspective, and it's a totally different. I won't say it's an adrenaline. It's a different stress. Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. But for me, I think. Stimulus. Yeah, I think for me the bit that I'd like to relive is just being able to go back and playing at a really good level and really enjoying that part of the life that you had.
And injury free.
That would be great. That would be great. But yeah,
he can't go back to that. That was like 10 years old.
And I guess Stu has given you lots of time to think.
Yeah, I think I will go a little down his way. I don't think I have something specific I would like to, but if I go back and look for what I would change during my career, then it would definitely be to be more. I was a hardworking player. What I got by working really hard. I would probably have liked that. I have enjoyed developing more new skills.
Like deception,
or like something else, but jumping smash or whatever. But
45 minutes, that's how it's done.
New skills or new things where I did everything as I did what I was told, but and like Stu, I did extra sessions on physical and things like this. So I optimized where I could, but I would probably have become a better player if I actually had looked more for the skill set in a younger age as well. So that would probably be the thing I would change if I got a second chance from that.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been an awesome chat. I've learned a lot. We really appreciate your time from your busy schedules with everything going on in lockdown.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I know it was a bit of a mission to organize the times to get both of you. So thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Badminton Lights Out by the Badminton Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Don't forget to like, comment, and share this episode. It's available on all platforms. Follow us on Instagram on the Badminton Podcast, no spaces, and Badminton Lights Out, no spaces. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is also the Badminton Podcast and Badminton Lights Out. Stay tuned for our next episode.